This small room in a Denver hospital is a reason for television.
The history of television news now spans decades.
It is a method of communication.
And for Denver 7, it's not only the archived footage, but the building, considered an example of what's called brutalist architecture, that tells a story to some.
By far the best broadcast building in Denver. I believe it's fair to call it brutalist.
The company that owns Denver 7, EW Scripps, is selling the building on the corner of Spear and Lincoln and looking for a new home with more space.
It's a local journalism success story. Even during the pandemic, we were adding people to our journalism operation.
Adding people and newscasts since launching a 24/7 streaming operation, buying KCDO, Local 3, and expanding the Scripps national team in Denver.
All that into that building that was built to be just one TV station. So we're busting at the seams.
Despite Denver 7's wishes to sell to a developer, a group of 3 Denver residents is fighting the potential demolition of this brutalist beacon along Spear.
It's placed along Spear Boulevard and almost by definition a landmark.
So what is this half-century-old building? A brutalist-style icon or a total scrape and rebuild? Let's deconstruct that by going 360 with the Denver City Council, pro-growth advocates, talk to those who live in the neighborhood, take a tour with the building manager and the GM, and we'll start with that group trying to save this from the wrecking ball.
It was meant to last. It was meant to be a proud representation of a broadcast news organization.
David Wise is a Denver architect who says the building is a superb example of brutalist architecture.
Really, the style comes out of the era. It's a bold building. It's tricky to build. Any imperfections would be visible.
He and 2 other Denver residents have filed an application to save the building under landmark status.
For the sake of keeping this legacy.
Wise believes this is an opportunity for Denver to preserve its past, all too often lost for the sake of new development. He believes a developer could wrap a new building around the existing Denver 7 octagonal tower, like the Holy Ghost Church at Broadway in California in downtown, or the Old Tavern at 17th and Pearl in Uptown.
I do think residential use in this building could be spectacular.
But a tour of that brutalist tower with building manager Rory Schmalzried reveals a brutal truth.
These are the original boilers, so built like 1969. They're kind of held together with spit and baling wire.
While the building may be iconic, it is hardly energy efficient by today's standards.
We're like 5 times as much energy use as what a green building would be.
Schmalzried says the roof needs replaced, the boilers and chillers are on the brink of failure, and the basement where all that invaluable archived footage is stored
When you're talking about history of the building, this is the history.
floods regularly.
If we get a big rain, I know beyond any shadow of a doubt, I'm going to have to come down here and squeegee the floor and mop and clean up.
I think our programs are responsive to the needs.
We're open to any solution that makes sense.
General Manager Dean Littleton has met with the group trying to save the building and respects their efforts. But he says the architect working on the potential new development believes adaptive reuse of the octagon would come at an astronomical price.
They have tons of experience with adaptive reuse, and they're the ones that have been advising us that it's just too much of a stretch.
And it's even disputed among top architects whether this is brutalist at all.
Is it a brutalist enough building that warrants it being landmarked over the owner's wishes? Even if you take out the fact that it needs a new roof, new HVAC, new electrical, new plumbing, new windows, the life safety requirements to bring the building to a place that it would be appropriate for people to live in are almost backbreaking.
Littleton points out if it remains a TV station, it's likely to remain unremarkable and unchanged.
As long as we're here, there will be security fences, there will be walls. There's an opportunity for something incredibly exciting at this gateway to downtown at the corner of Spear and Lincoln.
To present our broadcasting philosophy.
And then there's the people who live in the neighborhood.
I think that it is a unique building. It doesn't look like every other building, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a special building either.
Looks like it's been there forever.
I do like the almost, what was it, brutalistic architecture? It looks almost a little Soviet.
Some argue it's worth saving.
Built in 1969 and an architectural building. Definitely the Denver population should save this building.
Others say it's an eyesore.
It doesn't ring my bells.
Mary Coddington is a member of a group called YIMBY, or Yes in My Backyard, which believes there's too much negativity around new development.
YIMBY Denver is an organization that believes that Denver isn't full, and they want to have housing for everybody who's here and everybody who wants to move here in a way that's affordable.
YIMBY believes now's the time to tear down this old eyesore and build something new and exciting with residential and retail.
I think that that's the nature of cities. They change. It's important for residents to be open to that and think about what the city needs today and going into the future.
It's an issue that could ultimately go before the full council in May.
I think it's important for this particular conversation for me to withhold judgment until we actually hear the case in front of council.
Councilman Chris Hines represents District 10, which includes the Denver 7 site. He would prefer Denver 7 and the applicants for landmark status hammer out a solution before it gets to the city council.
That would be ideal.
He says Denver has recently been down a similar road with Tom's Diner on Colfax, which also sits in his district.
It was a similar situation in that it was an owner-opposed historic designation.
Let's go 360 at the counter.
Denver 7 went 360 on that story a couple years ago, raising questions then about landmark designations versus owner rights. The owner of Tom's was ready to retire, but needed the nest egg selling the building would provide.
We got email from all over the country and Canada. People felt really strongly about Tom's Diner and Tom's ability, his right to retire.
Hines says the city doesn't like to be in the business of telling land and business owners what to do with their property, especially at a critical crossroads like Spear and Lincoln.
I think a growing city is a healthy city. That's part of the magic of where Racine's and Mr. Banano's restaurants and the Channel 7 site, all of those are just right there. There are a lot of people who work, who can't afford a place to live. People are opposed to the unsanctioned encampments and are also opposed to the development at Racine's. And in some ways, kind of have to pick one.
Whatever the case, the building has inspired a lively debate about new possibilities, regardless of whether this place stays standing or comes down.
This is a purpose-built building that no longer serves the purpose for which it was built.
Communities either grow in their knowledge and sense of self through these sorts of interactions and controversies and conversations, or they don't.
What are our priorities as a city? And having housing for people is of the highest priority.
Russell Haythorne.
It makes us, it makes Denver, Denver.
Denver 7.